Karthik sir, sir is joined. Srinivasa Raju J. Please move into panelist.
Okay, madam. பண்ணிட்டேம்மா பண்ணிட்டேன்.
Sir, very good evening, sir.
Hello, madam. Very good evening.
So the participants are joining, sir. Let me start by 7.
Sure, sure. I mean, I'm perfectly all right.
Yes.
Sir, move Padma Priya Jayaraman into panelist, sir. Karthik, sir.
Add punishment.
Yes, okay. Sir, shall I start, sir?
Sure, I'm ready. Yeah.
Yes, sir. A very good evening to one and all gathered here. On behalf of the organizing team, I welcome our guest speaker, Professor Srinivasa Raju, sir, and all the participants from various institutions of India for the 8th day of the Faculty Development Program on Design and Development of Industry-led Curriculum in the Technological Era. I am privileged to introduce our guest speaker, Professor Srinivasa Raju. He is a Chief Executive Officer in PI Square Technologies Private Limited, Bangalore. Sir has 20 plus years of experience in strategic planning, marketing, business development, and talent acquisition. He has worked across education, training, skill development, IT, and semicon consulting, project and R&D. So today, sir is here to share his proficiency on advancement in technology and need for curriculum alignment. Sir, on behalf of the organizing team, I welcome you once again.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks for having me in this session. Hope my audio is clear.
Yes, sir. It's very clear.
Just confirm if you can see my slide.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
To make it full screen, it is good visible.
I will do. I will do.
Yes.
Full screen. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's clear, sir.
Perfect. A very good evening to all of you. And I know I can see more than 200 plus professors from various academic institutions have joined. Yeah, I know she's introduced me as a professor, but yeah, my stint in academics is primarily from some industry-led training kind of initiatives in my past career. Currently, I head an automotive company which works on some future technologies. I head Indian operations. We are basically headquartered in US, and we work on some emerging automotive tech. I think all of you know automotive technologies. I think it's a revolution. And maybe we'll talk a little bit in terms of what we do. Today's topic, I mean, I've gone through all the previous sessions and different topics. Just to set expectations right, I'm not getting into specifics of these, curriculum development per se from the academic perspective, but I want to give you, because I'm sure the other professors who have handled the previous 7 sessions, I'm sure they would have dealt in detail. So I wanted to give you more from an industry point of view, what's happening in industry, the future technologies, where's going to be the future employment, and how education institutions, and especially the academic fraternity, prepares our future engineers or graduates, for those employment, right? Primarily, that's the perspective that I would like to give in the next an hour or so, right? And of course, we'll keep it open for Q&A at the end. Yeah. So as the title goes, advancement in technology and need for curriculum alignment. I think it's the right timing now. I think earlier curriculum changes used to happen probably once in 2 years or 4 years or maybe longer period. I think now things have changed, and even the academic setup has to also be very, very dynamic. So let's look at primarily from what are the technology advancements or trends, and what opportunities are we talking about, and for which we will have to prepare our future, graduates and engineers. Yeah, I think a lot of these things very commonly you hear. I think most of you know about it, but I thought it's important to emphasize a little bit here. Some of the emerging technology areas, I think we all talk about AI, artificial intelligence. I think, artificial intelligence specifically is not, is not catering to a particular industry. AI is basically very horizontal. That means it cuts across various technologies and industries, right? Everywhere you will find AI, playing a role. Every industry will find AI playing a role. Every technology you'll find AI playing a role, right? The artificial intelligence is going to be omnipresent across industries. And data science, I think all of you know, data is becoming critical. I think we are producing tons and tons of data. Basically you browse, you see social media, e-commerce sites, you purchase, you browse mobile, location data, you move from one place to another place. So far, we have not made a proper use of data that is collected, right? All these big companies who's getting all this data are trying to make the effective use of data, right? Trying to make sense of the data that is being collected from various sources at the pace and speed and volume of data that they are collecting. So data science is again also a technology, and it will become industry agnostic, right? I mean, even the data becomes very important even in the healthcare medical sector, and also IT, and also e-commerce, more specific in IT, or any other industry, including industries, right? I mean, or aerospace and defense. Everywhere data is becoming important, right? They make more sense from the data they collected, and also it helps in decision making. It's not just data which is dumped somewhere or stored somewhere for future reference, but that's also helping most of these industries and the organizations to make sense of that data, helps them in various decision making as well, right? Yeah, robotics, I think you've seen the evolution of robots, and I think you find these robots playing a critical role, be it in healthcare, medical, to aerospace or defense, or to some extent something like your drones, or various applications. Robots is not just limited to a particular sector again. Yeah. 3D printing is again becoming very important. I think for rapid prototyping, I think that's the key solution, 3D printing. And I think I'm sure you know that people are building houses using 3D printing technology, right? I mean, quickly you're able to build your house. Yeah, the right use cases are, not just houses. I think there are many other applications where you want to do rapid prototyping. Cloud and edge technologies are also becoming very important. I think 10 years back, we said, let the data get stored in the central location. That's what we called it as cloud, the data center or the place where data resides. I think we are saying, let's make it cloud-based. Basically, they moved into a central compute, where you have a large form of compute devices available, and you compute in a central location, so there's not much of a load on the node or the edge. But now I think the new trend is basically, I think they're trying to see nodes also becoming very, very powerful, and they want nodes to play an important role, and part of the compute also happens in the node. And part of this intelligence is also built into nodes. So cloud and edge are also becoming important. And some of the use cases could be, suppose some video analytics of security data, right? I mean, by the time it goes to cloud, process the information and comes back and gives you the insight, I think it will take time. Instead, the edge itself will have tiny MLs, we call it as, models that sit, machine language models that basically sit at the edge level. And then, they process. So they're also having compute power on the edge devices as well. Yeah, I think looking at technologies like cybersecurity is also becoming I think the more and more we are connected, the more and more we're on the internet and the digital space. Security is the key, right? I mean, people, today have to protect both data, information, and other critical, assets, digital assets. Cyber security is becoming very important. And then I think you see metaverse, the AR, augmented reality, basically for people to have immersive experience of, this applications can be everywhere, right? I mean, it could be, maybe e-commerce to get you want to buy a product and you can have an immersive experience. You can have, especially metaverse kind of a thing, you can have your avatar and just buy a product online, wear it and see how it looks. And that kind of an experience is coming in, right? I mean, overall, I think a lot of them are betting high, and they look at, I think metaverse itself will be about $4 to $5 trillion industry, pretty huge. Yeah, and IoT, I think Internet of Things. I think it's across industries again, be it industrial automation to smart cities to, I think, consumer appliances. Now I think everything is connected. Your refrigerators are connected, your TVs are connected on the internet, and of course mobile phones are there from quite some time. And moving to automation, I think this again, wherever the mundane jobs are there, right, something which people have to do routinely, repeatedly, do those tasks. I think there is automation that is coming in, right? I mean, that's where the future engineers, I think, will have to look at beyond where things don't get automated. I think those are also becoming important skills for future engineers. And you look at Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing. I think most of you know, I think we are at this stage where, we are automating most of the factories for, better precision, faster production of, various things. And I think they also give a lot of right insights in terms of where the problems are, and all that can be identified using the smart manufacturing technologies which are deployed currently. I think automotive is another sector where autonomous driving. I know we all may think, India is not ready for autonomous driving. I do agree. But at the same time, there are technologies, one or two steps below, we call it as ADAS, Advanced Driver Assist Systems. These systems are basically helps, driver or the safety part comes in through ADAS systems. There are close to about 40-50 different features which helps driving to be more safer. A lot of alerts which are built into it. Features could be lane keep assist or blind spot detection in where you're taking turns, or 360-degree camera, parking assist sensors, to basically automatic emergency braking. Even if you miss to brake, I think the car itself will stop based on the objects in the front, another vehicle or any other object in the front. Or adaptive cruise control. A lot of such features have come in, which are very much in the cars that are currently being produced in India, right? For India, these features are very important. Yeah, autonomous driving, of course, a lot of best. They have the required infrastructure. I think they're most of the future cars that you would see, I think, will have this feature as default in most of the vehicles, if not all. I think drone technology, I think we know. Yeah, agri-tech, I think people may say that, I'll use drones to deliver, food to e-commerce goods to, all that in some countries. But I think we have a practical use cases here. I think agri-tech is what, very effectively, I think, trying to look at this drones technology. And then the medical, I think you see a lot of these, wearable devices which have come in, which gives you all key vitals. And also, especially on the, the healthcare sector, surgeries, etc. I think there are robotics-based surgeries which are being done today. I think a lot of that tech is used in the medical side. And of course, the more social media, digital presence is increasing, a lot of opportunities are also being, coming up in that space as well on the social media. And there's one area, of course, very niche, large volume employment may not be there, but otherwise the aerospace and defense sectors also, I think a lot of those technologies. I mean, I'm very happy to see in the recent past some of the startups, I mean, 2-year-old, 3-year-old startups sending satellites to space, and they've launched a rocket, ground up, they've designed completely. In the first attempt itself, they're able to send it to space, which probably, Tesla have taken some 3 or 4 attempts, they failed, and finally, eventually they send the rocket to space. I think that's another emerging field in India. Of course, globally, that's one space where opportunities are there. May not be in the volumes that we're talking about. Okay. So I've presented these technologies, which commonly I think most of you know, but I'm talking from a perspective of employment, right? I mean, end of the day, education institutions, build foundation, career foundation for all the people who are aspiring to be a part of this higher education system. At the same time, I think it's a fact that all of us have to accept at the end of the 8th semester for engineering, maybe 6th semester after degree, what is expected out of them is to either become an entrepreneur or get into some job. So which means anything education system is currently going to do should have a direct relationship with what's happening in industry, right? I mean, the required workforce, the future workforce, the education system should actually, prepare, right? That's very, very important. Yeah. Okay. We take questions at the end. Are we going good? Probably to Edmund or.
Yes, sir. We'll proceed with this. Questions will be posted by the participants, and at last will be reading.
Right. Okay, I got it. Okay. Sure. Right. Okay. Where are these opportunities coming? Right. We talked about emerging technology areas. Some of the pointers that would help. I think everybody talks about so many jobs coming and all that. On the contrary, people say there's recession and all jobs are going to go. AI coming in, so all jobs are going to go, and that kind of a thing, right? Probably at the end of Q&A, I think we can discuss some of these points, right? Just to clarify. But where are these opportunities, right? I mean, today India, is on a mission, especially to have the digital India to be a $1 trillion economy, right? I think all of you know today, Indian economy is probably about $2.5 trillion. And I think we are going to be world's third largest economy probably next couple of years. I think we're all marching towards that. In that, there's going to be a large contribution going to come from the digital piece of, the technology side of it, right? $1 trillion is a huge thing, right? In a $2.5 trillion economy, I think you can understand, is about 40% of our current economy. But of course, future is going to be $5 trillion, and that maybe 20% will come from the digital space of it, right? So that could be, IT or electronics or telecom or e-commerce or cybersecurity, IoT, and edtech to shared economy. To these are some things which government has identified as key areas for growth, and I think they're giving all the required impetus for these sectors to grow, and in turn, the economy grows, and the contribution to economy will be about $1 trillion is what is the estimate, basically, right? Yeah. And what it means to all of us is, in turn, this $1 trillion economy is going to create close to about 1 crore jobs across the digital space, be it telecom to e-commerce to, be it electronics to all that space, right? I mean, we're talking about 1 crore jobs being created, okay? Let's assume, we take this government data with a pinch of salt. Even 50% of that will be true, right? I mean, I'm saying even 50 lakhs is a huge opportunity, jobs, okay? Moving forward, I think all this data is in the public domain. I think all of you can access. Yeah. Next, if you basically look at, I think electronics generally, I think I've seen most of the engineers immaterial of which branch of specialization, electronics or electrical or electromechanical. Everybody ends up into IT and software, right? I mean, not looking at opportunities within their own core areas. I think we call this sector as ESDM, Electronic System Design and Manufacturing. Itself has a huge potential, right? I mean, it can create close to about on the design side, manufacturing. I think the number of jobs are huge, manufacturing side. On the design side, I think jobs are equally good. I mean, I'm talking about VLSI design to embedded systems to IoT to the packaging and all of that stuff. So, which are the sectors which will drive electronics predominantly? I think you would see communication and broadcasting is one sector. I think all your mobile phones to communication, when I say, is your telecom infrastructure, because India is going to go to 5G, right? I think, if you look at India as such, has close to about 250,000 gram panchayats and leading to about 6 lakhs to about 6.5 lakhs to 7 lakh villages, and 700 odd districts in the country. All that the infrastructure needs to be migrated, and you need to move to 5G, right? I mean, currently it's all in 3G and 4Gs, and the more 5G, right? I mean, more connectivity increases, and automatically, I think worldwide they've done this survey to see the impact of telecom networks. The more people are connected, I think it has a very positive impact on the economy, right? The more people connected, the economy also grows faster. So anyway, government is connecting the fiber network across all these 250,000 gram panchayats and connecting 6 lakh plus villages, etc. But the 5G, the wireless network also is going to reach to most of these places, right? And then huge bandwidth, and the more bandwidth and more people are connected, people buy stuff online or take their businesses online. All that will happen, I think, with the telecom, the 5G coming into India, right? And the medical tech, which I've already spoken about, right? I mean, a lot of these diagnostic systems to operation, post-op care to some of these wearable devices and all that. I think a lot of opportunities there. And automotive, I think I've already briefed a little bit on the automotive side. I think I have 1 or 2 slides which I will emphasize a little more. Is the kind of tech that is getting into car. I don't know how many of you know the cars, the architecture of cars is becoming now software driven. So there is this thing called SDV, software defined vehicle. That means the vehicle architecture itself, as they define the software architecture and they put the other pieces together. The earlier it used to be mechanical and put some electronic stuff into it, but now I think things have changed completely, right? So the more and more software is getting into cars. I know how many of you know cars has more software code than the jumbo jet aircraft, and maybe 3 times more software code than a jumbo jet aircraft. And cars has maybe about 40 to 50 electronic control units, ECUs, which controls various subsystems in the car. And it has a network by itself within the car for communication, basically, right? A lot of complexity getting into cars now, more software getting in, more opportunities. What we have seen in automotive in the last 150 years is all going to change in the next 10 years. One is on the electrification side, second is on the autonomous side, right? I mean, these are 2 disruptive technologies, I think, which will change the way basically cars are designed and things like that, right? Aerospace and defense, I think did mention about it. I think you'd see a lot of startups. Earlier, this sending rockets to space is mostly NASA's and ISRO's of the world were doing it, right? And today, young startups, 2-year-old, 3-year-old companies, are actually sending these rockets. So a lot of that you would see disruption in that space. Space travel, of course, is a different concept altogether, but anything, I think I personally believe any technology which can help the way we live is what matters more than the fancy stuff of going to space and all that. I think that's something is okay, right? I mean, yeah. And computing hardware, I think especially on the data center side, I think you see, the data center systems, especially servers, processors which are used, the processing speeds have become multiple times, year on year. I think we are increasing because more and more compute is happening on the data center and cloud. I think compute hardware is also going to go up. Right? Industrial automation is another area. So these are some sectors which actually drive electronics, mobile. Consumer appliance also is there, but I'm saying along with it, apart from that, or along with it, these are some things which will drive the future electronics growth. Okay, and I think all of us have realized the importance of electronics, and even people who didn't know electronics have realized the importance of electronics. Somebody booking a car have to wait for a year, and somebody trying to buy some stuff and had to wait for 6 months, 1 year because shortage of supplies, right? I think that is where India has taken an advantage today. I think a lot of companies who are moving out of China are trying to commit their investments in India. I mean, they look at us as much potential partners to collaborate and set up these manufacturing facilities. But we already have a lot of mobile manufacturing facilities, but those are basically blue collar jobs that comes in basically, right? I'm talking on the design side, which is mostly for engineers and graduates with opportunities to come. Okay. Yeah, EVs at one point of time has been a distant dream for India, but I think EVs is the reality. I think you would find a large percentage of our vehicles will be EVs maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, large percentage. Things are a little slow because the ecosystem is still not built. When I say ecosystem, I think anybody buying a car today, people buy EVs mostly for city use, or in most of the cases as a second vehicle today, as of now, right? Because highways that charge anxiety, right? I mean, if I have to go 500 kilometers, I don't know the charge will last 500 kilometers. Imagine if it stops in between, what happens, right? So the charging ecosystem has to be built. I think a lot of companies are coming forward to build charging systems, pan-India, within cities, highways, everywhere that's coming up. And government is also taking a lot of interest in the space. If that comes up, I think EVs will just catch up, right? I mean, you will find every fourth, fifth car will be an EV in the next 10 years, for sure, right? Or even more. I mean, my prediction could be on the lower side, but I'm sure it'll be much more is what we will see happening in India, right? And the maintenance is much lesser. Of course, the battery and you have a motor to drive, nothing else, right? Unlike an engine which has few hundreds and thousands of parts which are, that assist the engine, the combustion engines, all that is, replaced with one electric motor. The complexity is gone, right? Your transmission is gone. I mean, you just have motor, and where based on the accelerator, it'll give you the required speed, right? Yeah. Some of these technology, I mean, I just added one slide because we work on these areas. Infotainment is one. I think the way human-machine interfaces, especially the way you interact with a car, is completely going to change. And I see in the urban setup, I think a lot of them spend at least 10, 15 hours in the car every week, right? I mean, it could be more for some people, right? It could be even 20, 25 hours in a car. So how do you improve that experience for people spending in a car? So that includes the in-vehicle infotainment systems, and the safety also has to go up. And then electric vehicles, so the more on the greener side, EVs will come into picture. Cars are more connected now. And cybersecurity comes into play, right? I mean, anything which is connected, people can hack into. So how do we secure your, systems? I think that's where cybersecurity is a special standard for cars, the automotive cybersecurity is what we call. And I mean, these are all areas as Pi Square, we work on it. We have specialized in these areas. We work for our global customers. And just for the interest, I just added one slide, not very relevant for this topic, but I thought a lot of them have this, what is autonomous and, ADAS and all that stuff. I thought I'll just explain. But basically, when you talk about autonomous vehicle, I think the L5 is where we call a vehicle can be fully autonomous. That means in any given condition, car can drive itself, right? I mean, there is no steering also. You just get in and punch in your destination and car will take you there. That's it. So what is this autonomy we are talking about? At the end of the day, you control three things in a car, which is your steering, and you control your acceleration, you control your braking, right? I mean, these are three things you should be able to control. So at different levels, L0, there's nothing, the conventional old cars. L1 is, yes, some assistance. L2 is where I think predominantly everywhere in the world, I think most of the cars will come with L2 features right now, and which has automatic emergency braking, to lane keep assist, to adaptive cruise control, to, I think these are all features which are built into it. L3 is a little more advanced. I think in some given conditions, especially highways, I think you don't have to worry, right? You still have to be present, and you still have to have, you should be able to take control in some situations. L4, I think that your involvement gets minimized, and L5, I think it's completely automatic, right? You don't even have a steering wheel. So I think moving to the point on the opportunity side, I think we are getting into, I think, a lot of buzzword about startups. I mean, why I'm emphasizing this startup slide here is basically, the higher education institutions not just create people who are job seekers. I think we should also look at creating job creators, right? I mean, that responsibility is again with higher education, right? I mean, the mindset of youngsters, and that ecosystem is very right. I think there is an estimate is that, India will have at least 10 million, which is about 1 crore startups by 2047. That's when India will have 100 years of independence, right? I mean, we'll be completing 100 years of our independence. By then, we will have 1 crore startups. Imagine each startup employs maybe with 20, 30 people. I think straight away, I think 30 crore jobs are with startups only. Forget about bigger organizations, right? Yeah, now question is, how many of them will succeed? How many will fail? All that, right? I think unfortunately, India is something where failure is not taken it right, unlike the West, right? You see many of the companies who are successful, any company that you take who are very successful would have failed maybe at least a couple of times, right? I mean, 3-4 times they would have failed and the fourth venture succeeded. Unfortunately, in India, we don't take failure very right. We always criticize failure, but nobody understands that, a lot of learning that happens when you fail. I think that the culture is slowly coming in, to India, where we started accepting a failure in startups, because, as of now, the success rate is very, very small, right? I mean, 5-10% is the success. Out of 100 companies, 5-10 succeed, and probably 90% of them don't make it big, right? So the other things, I mean, that ecosystem is evolving, and obviously the mindset in India today is just start a company, they start with the intention to sell. I think that should go. I think naturally all that is now coming into India right now. I think a lot of these entrepreneurs are thinking long term, building organizations which last and scale, and all that companies are thinking. So huge potential for employment. I think this is one area education institutions have to keep in mind. It's not all the time jobs, but also create entrepreneurs. Yeah, that's about a little bit on technology advancements, the kind of technology emerging areas that are today we look at where the employment opportunities are, and the opportunity per se within India, right? I've not even taken the global context. I've only talked about more in India context, right? Okay. So when such opportunities are there, it's important today. I think we all know I think everybody talks and rather criticizes, which I'm not for it. I'm a little against. There's no point in criticizing. Let's show the way to people, right? So we all talk today. 20-30% of our engineers only directly employable, right? Rest of the people find it very difficult. I think we all know. Leaving aside a couple of premier institutions, the next set of institutions, all the people don't make it to employment immediately after their graduation. They find it very difficult. Maybe a couple of, a certain percentage of them don't even get into industry. They get into other jobs, basically, right? And that could be various factors. I think the factor could be the people who get into engineering itself, don't have that required aptitude or passion. They just get in for a heck of degree. But there are a large percentage of people, unfortunately, don't get into industry because they lack the required skills. Unlike earlier, where companies have no choice to hire someone who finishes graduation and they take the responsibility of training them and putting them into employment and projects, etc. But today, I think organizations also, I think, they're also finding it difficult to keep people for 6 months, 1 year, train them. If they have no choice, obviously they will continue to do it. But if they have a choice, they would like to go to institutions and pick up people where they're ready to deploy, or with minimal training, they should be able to start working on various projects. That's the need from industry. While there's opportunity, there are so many startups coming in, the industry is growing in, mostly all sectors are growing in. And then if education institutions also come forward, right, step up their game and, prepare the students for those jobs. I think at least as a nation, I think whatever we are aiming, a $5 trillion or $10 trillion economy in the next 15 years or so, I think all that will be a reality. Okay, just to add to that, I will tell you the impact, right? On the left-hand side, I think you see an image which basically tells the countries whose basically economic development has grown at a stage where they have maximum demographic dividend. So what is demographic dividend is? We have more working age population than the dependent population. That's the demographic dividend. You basically look at Japan, has grown in this period where they have the youngest population. Most of them are involved in the economic activity, which means people are working in industries, people are working in agriculture, or different sectors, right? They're actively involved. People are productive. They're doing some job. So that way, you can see Japan, right? After World War II, and they had to bounce back and become probably world's top 5 economies. Nobody would have expected Japan to do it. Such a small country, and after World War II and everything, they had to end up rebuilding. They had that advantage of demographic dividend. Same thing, Italy's economy has grown. You see Japan economy, the demographic dividend is gone after 2004. You would see the pace at which they've grown in that 40 years versus in the last 20 years, you can see the difference, okay? And Korea, for that matter, right? They still have that advantage of the young population till 2027. And China also, you can see, right? The maximum growth happened in the last 20 years, right? China became probably, basically a manufacturing hub for the entire world, not just for their country, right? Anybody wants to manufacture from a safety pin to parts in the rockets, to buy from China. Because of economies of scale, they built large factories, be it semiconductors to anything, garments to furniture to everything, people go and buy from China. Reason, I think they've built such facilities where nobody can, give you at that price points that you want, right? Now, always we think China is cheap products, not necessarily. It depends on how much you want to pay, and you will get a product of that quality. And for example, Apple phone is manufactured in China, right? Even probably 2,000, 3,000 rupees, Chinese phones are also manufactured there, right? Depending on what kind of a product you want, I think they have facilities. They built all that. And I think you've seen how Chinese economy grown during that period, right? And similarly, India has this demographic dividend. We have a large young population today. We are the youngest nation in the world. 2018, 37 years, I think close to about 2055. Till 2055, we have this demographic dividend advantage. We have large young population, more working population, and more opportunities gets created. I think it's a time where both academia, industries have to come together and have people who are more skilled and participate in the economic activity. I think becomes more important for a nation like us to grow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, coming back, I think, yeah, we have that demographic dividend. At the same time, if you look at higher education landscape in India, I think we are one of the largest higher education, setup sector in the world, right? And with about 1,000 plus universities, about 40,000 plus colleges, engineering to degree to diplomas and so on and so forth, and also some 11,000 standalone institutions. These are basically not higher education institutions, but they also are part of this developing some skills. They are non-affiliated to any university or any government body, but they independently operate, basically, right? A large system, right? Yeah. And on the contrary, if you see, our gross enrollment ratio in higher education is still 27%, where it should have been around 30% as of 30+% as on 2020. And our goal is to be at least 50% plus higher education. Our enrollments in higher education is very, very low. Maybe I think it meant this is an India average, but things could be very different if you are Southern India versus North India versus East India versus West India, right? And things will be very different, right? I think we should look at, I think in spite of having such a large education institution set up, and I think enrollment ratios are low. I think this is one area I think government is also working towards to increase this. When I say higher education, I'm not just referring to engineering, I'm referring to degrees, other disciplines. When I'm saying, though my presentation largely focuses on tech side of it, because that's the industry that I represent, but I think you can see any industry, be it pharma, right? I mean, pharma is the biggest in India, right? I mean, we have seen during pandemic, I think we supplied the vaccines to the entire world. And while, we've catered to 1 billion people in our own country and also supplied to the entire world. I think that's the kind of, industry that we've built. And probably we are one among those first set of, countries where we are able to kind of come out with vaccine. And not just this COVID vaccine, I think especially other, chronic diseases or, prevention for chronic diseases, the vaccines are, we've been there for the last 1 or 2 decades supplying to the entire world. I'm saying pharma, biotech industry, to telecom for that matter, again, largest market. So every sector, there's an opportunity. Let's not look at only IT and tech more. Yeah, I think with the new national education policy, I think with my limited understanding, I'm able to kind of present few pointers. I think the goal of NEP is basically to have at least 50% gross enrollment ratio and try to, build skills. I understand. I think a lot of us, debate. Industry says I need people ready to deploy. Higher education institutions say my job is not, and rather, our objective is not to, build people for a specific job. Our objective is basically to build the right foundation. Then people tend to choose specializations in the areas of their interest and grow. Right. I mean, that's where the post graduation and other things come into picture. But in the higher education context today, I think things have completely changed, right? I mean, people opting for higher education, when I say post-graduation, has come down drastically, right? A lot of them after UG are getting into employment or becoming entrepreneurs. So I think when we are looking at it, and a large percentage of them have to get into industry, I think that way the demand from education institutions has also changed. I think we should, while we build a good foundation for their career, also ensure they're industry ready. I think that's where the skilling courses, all that comes into picture, right? Right. I know current focus, I think maybe 20% higher education, 60% opting for jobs, some 10% self-employed, 10% drop out from higher education, pursue their interests, and so on and so forth, right? Yeah, I will not get into details. I'm sure I think you're much more aware about these things. And core essentials, critical thinking. I think some of these the future skills that are required in the AI era, artificial intelligence, where a lot of automation happening. There are certain areas for sure, right? Whatever technology cannot automate, right? I mean, those are skills anywhere are limited to humans and more critical to develop, right? Yeah. Yeah, expectations from education. I'm probably giving my perspective, and I'm sure I think industry looks at this more or less the same point. Basically, we're looking at people to be a little bit overall development is important. When I say overall development, it's not just technical skills all the time, right? Even the life skills and those abilities, the other attributes becomes very, very important. Yeah, to some extent, I think technology can be taught. The other areas becomes very critical, right? And build a strong foundation for career for people. And education should become a source. Straight away, I should be able to come to education institution, hire talent, maybe with minimal training on the industry processes and all that minimal training. I should be able to kind of put them. They should be productive, basically, right? I mean, we're losing that edge of having people for 1 year getting trained throughout the year, and then first year, second year they get into actual productivity. I think those days have gone, and we want them to be as productive as earlier as possible, right? And entrepreneurs mindset. I think this is not from an industry perspective, but this generally as a nation perspective. I think we should look at creating more job creators and then job seekers, right? I mean, all the time today we have looked at only employment as a major, focus. I think we should also look at entrepreneurship as one of the things that we should focus on, right? The mindset of an entrepreneur that we should develop in the higher education space. A strong industry engagement. I think you should start working with companies. You should start working with more academia industry engagement. While academia is all the time interested, I think there's always been a problem on the industry side to come forward. I think if you look at the West, I think they have a very close collaboration, industry and academia. And I think you see any of those inventions that typically happen as academia industry collaborations, right? I mean, research projects to products to technology development to some IPs, all have come out with these academia industry collaboration. Unfortunately, here the challenge is, in India, a large part of our tech sector works on services, not really products. With the startup ecosystem coming in, a lot of product mindset has come in. I think a lot of innovation happening. And I think I could see a lot of these IITs, IISCs, and a couple of other institutions are, I think, playing a pivotal role in incubating most of these startups to actually start developing their products. Their professors basically get involved and mentor these guys. And some industry also comes forward and supports these people. And that ecosystem is slowly getting built, but today it's largely limited to IITs and probably a couple of good institutions in each state. And that has to change, for startups to look at you or industry to look at every institute. Basically, they look at professors with the required competence and the right infrastructure in the institution. these things come in, I think automatically more collaboration will happen, right? Yeah. Okay. So skills, some of the in AI era, I know tech is important, and that's why I said the technology skills, job specific skills, I think more specific, and just keeping a little away, I'm sure, and that's understood. When we say AI jobs are there, I think somewhere we have to end up training or rather upskilling these people on the AI side of it. And what other things that comes in, which probably AI, I think this one question commonly comes up. I'm sure I think some of you will have in mind. I think when more automation, AI coming in, I think is going to take away jobs. Where are the new jobs that are going to come? While I'm on the contrary saying, okay, automation will take away jobs, but we're also going to create more jobs. Like a digital economic mission that India is driving is going to create 1 crore jobs. While automation is going to take away, where are these jobs going to come? Right? Always please look at one thing, any technology disruption, I think will create newer employment opportunities. Maybe traditional jobs would go, right? Some, like for example, software testing, some mundane routine activity. I don't know how many of you all actually seen software testers working, right? And some of them are very routine tasks, right? Why waste human power there, right? I mean, instead they can do much better jobs. I think those are areas employment is going to come. Like I'll give you one classic example. Banking sector is the one which actually gone digital first, right? I mean, compared to any other sector, banking is the one where they've used technology. I'm talking about probably early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. They wanted to go for basically use technology for banking and financial services. Everybody said resisted, because reason being, I think you include technology, jobs are going to go. So might as well, don't allow technology to be implemented. A lot of banking unions stopped it happening. But what happened today, technology is done, and banking sector created probably 10 times more jobs than it was earlier. Today, because of technology, we're able to take banking sector to even the remotest villages possible, right? I mean, they can. And with the unified payment interface coming in, the digital payment system that has come in, I think even the smallest, remotest guy who's uneducated will be able to today transfer money and bank through UPI system, right? Look at employment opportunity. Millions of jobs got created. While in the beginning, everybody felt, I think this technology is going to take away jobs. But on the contrary, I think you're able to expand the banking services to the common people in the villages as well. That's exactly is going to happen in the AI space as well, right? And some of the routine tasks obviously gets automated, and the newer opportunities gets created. Yeah. So what becomes important in the AI era? I think some things won't get automated immediately. I think your skills that people should have is critical thinking and reasoning, complex problem solving, cognitive flexibility, adaptability, change, etc. Some decision making skills, emotional intelligence, etc. Interpersonal skills, creativity is one area I think very, very important, right? Problem solving is another area becomes very, very important. I think these are some skills along with your technology and your concepts and all that. I think we should somewhere make sure these skills are developed as a part of your academic setup. Becomes very, very important. This will become a differentiator, right? I mean, for their career. Yeah. Right. Industry engagements, basically coming back to my point of saying proactively engage with industry. Technically speaking, I think most of the companies are willing to collaborate as long as they see value. I think you have to create a value for industry to come to your education institution, right? That value could be, infrastructure, the professors, to the environment, the academic system, the kind of students that are there. All that becomes important for an industry to start collaborating closely with you, right? And I think most of them are willing to work with you on the curriculum side. Okay, you may ask, no, that's not true. But personally, if you ask me, I'm willing to, our company is willing to work with good institutions who have got good infrastructure. We are okay to do a joint programs, right? we are open, right? I'm not giving some gyan which we are not practicing. I said, like us, right? I'm sure most of the companies are willing to work. All of us need good talent, right? I mean, if we can engage with academic institutions, I think we are open. So that way, we can do a joint BTech, MTech programs, work with the curriculum, etc., right? Courses and certifications, industry projects, some problem statements we can give, some internships we can work with, right? Faculty development programs. This is a very good initiative, and good to see. I think some 366 people join. That shows the commitment of professors to, bring in that change. And yeah, this should not be short term just for a placement, or that should not be there. I think it should be long term, consistent. I think that relationship should continue. I think industries is more than happy to work, at least from my point of view, because I also actively work with industry associations. I know one of the industry association, which I am part of the core group, takes some initiatives, which predominantly in the semiconductor embedded IoT space. They are setting up center of excellences in academic institutions, right? Of course, they have some key parameters to qualify. I think they are coming forward, right? As an association, they'll bring in industry participation also. Yeah. So one last slide to go. I think while we all say good things, there are good opportunities, there is a need, there's huge potential. As a nation, our economy is going to grow. We'll become one of the world's largest economies, I think top 2, top 3, maybe top 1, right? I mean, maybe in the long term. I know we actually, I don't know how many of you all know, before British could come in, India is the largest economy, right? I mean, they were contributing about 25-30% to the world's economy, largest. And of course, British took away a lot of our wealth. I think we are again recreating all that stuff. And I'm sure, I think we will be one of the largest economies, or the largest economy in the future. But in order to do that, and especially in the next 30 years is very, very critical. And more so is basically developing this talent, the young population that we have. I think we should be able to put them into productive economic engagement. Becomes very, very important, right? And I think all this government should stop giving some free stuff, freebies. Instead, I think give them employment opportunities. And in order to do that, I think academic institutions play a very, very critical role, and which has happened, I think, across any developed economies. You see, academic institutions play a very important role in developing human resources. And I think here, I think some of the things that you could probably look at considering is, and I'm sure I think most of you may be doing, right? I mean, I really don't know which all the institutions are a part of this, but I'm making a generic statement. Specialized courses in emerging areas to be launched. I know specialization was earlier more on the post-graduation side. I think I've seen a lot of institutions are offering specializations in maybe, computer science to electronics to all that, right? I mean, it's getting at the undergraduate level. And, maybe if you don't have the required autonomy, you're not a private university or a deemed university, in that at least you can give some, curriculum, in terms of additional subjects that can get in, which can lead to this specialization, right? And those are, I think, few things that you can look at it. So where will you get this required know-how? I'm sure universities to industries, I think all of them are willing to contribute directly, indirectly to help the academic institutions. And a lot of these things, I think, available. I think a lot of initiatives from government also I see helping institutions on the curriculum development. Of course, a lot of industries are coming forward, partnering with institutions. And try and bring this project-based learning. That means, I know they'll learn maybe 40 odd subjects in 4 years. And each subject has some important concepts. See opportunities to apply, the application side of it is basically what I see is missing in academic institutions. Maybe I may be wrong, maybe you have some limitations because you have too much of academic work to do. Where's the time to do all that, right? And somewhere I think you'll have to figure a way out where, all the, engineers or graduates should be able to apply each of those concepts into some mini projects, and that's where the actual learning basically happens, right? So that kind of a atmosphere that we should create in academic institutions. And I think NAP coming in, I think arts guy can learn some subjects from IT guy can learn some subjects from commerce. I think they have this choice. I don't know whether it is fully implemented now or not, but eventually I think that's the goal, right? When you can choose interdisciplinary, intradisciplinary kind of subjects, right? I mean, you can choose. I think try and, I know you have limitations in, teaching everything as a part of the academic setup, but try and create a lot of e-learning resources. And today, I think you have NPTEL content on the Indian side of it. I think a lot of effort IITs have taken to put together content. And, this YM from AICT, or I think the MOOCs globally itself, right? I mean, even some student want to learn a particular subject. You can even join a MOOCs course from Harvard or Oxford or, MIT to any global top universities. Courses are free, right? I mean, they just pick up a course, join. You're encouraged, especially professors should be more aware of such resources that are available on the internet space and see how, that can be included a part of the curriculum. Set of students can learn that, those things becomes important. Industry collaboration, not just for placements. I see a lot of placement guys go to companies asking, hire people from. I know that's important. At the end of the day today, you get admissions when you have more placements. That's important. I'm not saying that is not important, but I think it should be beyond that, right? I'm sure all of your alumni in good companies see how you can engage back your alumni, and a lot of them are willing to contribute, right? And with the technology coming in, they need not to physically come to your institution. I mean, they can always be virtual. So you can have active engagement with alumni. I think if you're old institution, I'm sure some of your alumni members would have become vice presidents of companies, CEOs of companies, maybe running startups. We don't know, right? I mean, if that way, I think your own institution itself would have produced so many entrepreneurs and so many leaders. And it's just going back to them and see, how you connect with them more actively, right? I mean, that itself. You don't have to create a new setup. Instead, your alumni network itself can become a strong industry collaboration can happen through that. Okay. Internships, I think I see. In fact, I have a good friend of mine who's who's part of AICT. He's a chief coordinating officer, and he keeps posting a lot of post on the internships. Today Microsoft to Salesforce to all the top guys, Amazon to IBM to, everybody are offering virtual internships. I think physically, I think it's a limitation, right? Companies have limited infrastructure. I think all of them cannot go physically to offices and work there, right? I mean, remote internships are being provided. Huge opportunity. I think, there, things have changed, what it was earlier to today, right? And some entrepreneurship. I think this entrepreneurship ecosystem is there. Maybe, as professors, you may have limited understanding about how this ecosystem functions, but you take a little interest, I think you will be able to figure out. There's already an ecosystem built, which means, they have these technology business incubators in academic institutions. The private ones are running incubators, private ones are running accelerators. Government has created so many facilities for entrepreneurs. And this, I think one initiative could be Atal Innovation Centers, which have come up. That's also to encourage entrepreneurship. So many things are already happening. It's just that, some awareness that you should get to know, Google it, try to find out where is the nearest incubator, talk to them, and see if somebody is interested to pursue that entrepreneurship side of it. I think see if you can connect all the dots and help them to grow. And not only that, I think some trainings and awareness to be created to people. Yeah. And the next point is again that, right? Collaboration with incubators, accelerators, both government, private, a lot of that's happening, right? I think India has, as of today, I think some 70, 80,000 registered startups, who's part of this DIPP, registered startups. I'm not sure how many unregistered are there. I'm sure it could be 2-3 times more will be unregistered startups. When I say startup, I think please don't always think it is technology, right? Agriculture also, right? There's so many people have started agri startups. So any industry, I mean, not necessarily all the time, but technology is becoming key, right? I mean, anything that you do, I think even in agriculture, technology is used, whether dairy technology is used, pharma technology is used. So technology becomes a core part of it, but otherwise you're solving problems in those respective sectors, right? So that way, a startup need not to be all the time IT company, right? Yeah. And some look at, I'm sure, I think I know most institutions run these, I know they use a word called soft skills and stuff like that. But I think this should not be just limited to cracking an interview. I mean, I know institutions run some 10-day course saying just before the campus interviews, they run some 10-day soft skills training. I think it should become a way of life, right, in the academic setup. I think that's where I'm trying to say, I'm sure already you're doing some things there, but I think if you can look at, make it more integral, I think to bring in that change. I mean, change cannot happen. Soft skills cannot be improved with, classroom trainings, for sure. You do any amount of training, it cannot happen unless, they practice it, and, it should be, it takes longer time. That means it should become integral part of your education setup is what I basically feel. Okay. You're right. I think, yeah, I'm more or less, I think an hour is where I've looked at, I think, completing. I think I've more or less done. So any of you wanted to connect back and some inputs, I think you can, ping me. I think I will give, happy to share. And for me, I think, working with education institutions, the previous career of mine, I think primarily worked with a lot of education institutions. And anytime happy to contribute, and basically on my personal interest, right? So I believe the future is all, how well, we prepare our engineers for future jobs. It all depends on that, not just industry, including our country depends on that. So it's very, very important all the academic institutions play an active role, vital role in contributing to India's growth. With this note, I think, thank you. I think I was able to give right insights. Open for questions if there are any.
Thank you, sir. I welcome the participants who would like to interact with the guest. Please raise your hand so that we can make you as a panelist. Dear participants, it's an open forum. If you would like to interact with the guest, please raise your hand in the option provided. Karthik sir, please make him as panelist. Mr. Sunny Verma.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay, sir. Meanwhile, I'll be reading the questions which was posted already.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
What are the curriculum alignment in modern education?
See, again, I specifically said, I mean, I didn't get into details in the sense curriculum alignment. What I meant was basically, your curriculum should be, basically designed in such a way that you're preparing future technologies, right? I mean, that's what is very important. When I say alignment, that means you should adopt, like say, for example, AI. It should become part of your, AI is, when I say horizontal, I think I should say AI should be taught in schools, right? That kind of a thing, I think, is what I was referring to. But how do you go ahead and design in terms of your Bloom's taxonomy and all that? I've actually not got in. I'm sure the other professors would have basically covered in the previous 7 sessions. Okay.
Thank you, sir. And how the entrepreneurship mindset could be developed within the students?
Right. So basically, I've seen, last week, I was there in something called TIE Global Summit. Okay. TIE stands for the Indus Entrepreneurs. I mean, they have globally some 67 chapters in about probably 40-50 countries. All the entrepreneurs. And the youngsters who have come in, I mean, a lot of them are basically first-time entrepreneurs, which I've interacted personally, and some 1,800 people were there in that forum for about 2 days. I was there with most of them. So if you look at it today, I think the risk-taking appetite, unlike, you look at previous generation, majority, or probably talk about 1 or 2 generations before, largely like livelihood. Somehow you have to get into some job and make sure there's a stable earnings every month, and you got to take care of family, etc. The present generation, I think, mostly family, at least the parent side, are more or less settled. There comes the newer guys. The employment is not only the option for them. I mean, they at least get some 1-2 years time where they can explore entrepreneurship opportunities. When I say mindset, basically they should identify the problems, basically not necessarily all the time the global problems. You can look at problems in your local setup, right? I mean, it could be specific to village, specific to agriculture sector in India. There's so many opportunities. It's basically we have to create awareness among them on what is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is nothing but, identifying problems and trying to solve using business solution and technology, right? So I want people to start looking at that. But the risk is, all the time, we know that, failure rate is very, very high. So most of them back out. But there is an ecosystem to support, right? I mean, your incubators. Government funds some of these startups. Maybe they give 5 lakh, 10 lakh rupees if your idea is really good. I mean, your idea should not be to make money, but your idea should be to solve problem, initially to start on a local front, but gradually on a global, larger scale. As long as that kind of awareness about ecosystem, the way they go about addressing, solving these problems, I think naturally the interest gets developed among the youngsters. Look at beyond jobs. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Sunil Verma, you can interact. Mr. Sunil Verma, would you like to interact with the guest? You have given permission to speak. Please go ahead. Okay, sir. I'll go with the next question. What's the role of higher education institutes to prevent the failures, if incurred, during the phase when we witnessed crores of startups in 2007, as you mentioned? How could we prevent those failures?
Okay. Again, it's all right. Today, the startups always, if you look at, I mean, where I've seen failure is, majority of the people who ended up, starting the startups, they're very fascinated with the tech piece of it. They don't have that core problem and what they're actually addressing. All the time they say is, I will develop technology. The business acumen is not there. They don't think about how they can scale this. Those things are, people generally don't look at it. They only say, okay, I'll develop technology. Not even having market dynamics in place. I think these things becomes important to probably, even your idea for you to start working on developing. I think you'll have to do a lot of research to understand the area that I'm working in. Is it the right thing? Not just, I know technology, so I'll develop technology. Is not going to help. Many of them failed we call, in startup terminology called infant mortality. A lot of them, even before they grow, they die, right? So that's because, their thought process is very limited. So that awareness piece, which I was talking about, expose them to incubators, they can talk to peer entrepreneurs, and a lot of mentors are willing to mentor. The ecosystem is growing pretty big. It's just that, you explore, have right collaborations and create that awareness. So technology is not everything, right? I mean, think beyond that is what, makes all the difference, at least for an entrepreneur, is what I feel. Okay. Okay, next is how much NEP will increase, gross enrollment ratios. NEP, again, government can only facilitate or basically an enabler. They can bring a policy framework, but at the end of the day, it's the education institution has to step up. And when I say step up, there's an opportunity, right? I mean, every education institution wants to scale. Nobody would like to say, okay, I will train 1,000 people a year. That's it. I don't want to grow. I don't think any educational institution will say. So the opportunity is we can grow 100% in the probably next 10, 15 years, which means which educational institution understands the space well, take right inputs, good training, good curriculum, good industry engagement, placement or entrepreneurship of people. I think all of them have opportunity to grow. That's what I feel. And next question is, I think, which state is recorded with more startups in India? So this again goes back to, I think you look at it, I think there are 5-6 major startup hubs in India. I think one of them basically Bangalore. I think Bangalore has largest number of startups. And the next is Hyderabad, and of course Chennai, Pune to some extent, and the Delhi National Capital Region, Gurgaon, Noida, Delhi, that cluster has large startups. But there are smaller hubs, could be Coimbatore to Ahmedabad to, so many other smaller hubs which have come up, right? But otherwise, major chunk is, of course, I think basically Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Chennai, and NCR region. That's where you find majority of them. Okay. And I think one more thing I would like to emphasize. Of course, while there are failures, but you also see in the last 1 year, I think we have close to about, I think, the unicorns we call, right? In startup terminology, unicorn means a company whose valuation is about $1 billion, which means around 7,000 to 8,000 crores, right? They're valued at that. There are many unicorns, right? I mean, that's about 100 today, unicorns. Right? And some of the unicorns are built 1,000 crore, $1 billion company in a span of a year or two. They're able to scale very fast. Reason, the ecosystem is very vibrant now. If your idea is good, you have right founders. I think one more thing is, I think most of these companies who invest in startups basically mostly invest on founders, while of course they have interest in technology problem they're solving, etc. I think they actually bet on the founders, right? I mean, how passionate they are, and the skill they are, and things like that, right? And that's important. So right ecosystem is there. People are willing to invest money and all that, which is very important for a startup. Okay. Okay. Yeah. How much NEP will fulfill future jobs as well as entrepreneurship skill? As I told you, government can create a policy framework, government be an enabler. But technically speaking, I think let's not depend on government. I think we all have to, it's like, we have 40,000 institutions in our country. Each institution probably on an average 300 to 1,000 people, graduate from each institution. I think if each institution does things well, and that itself takes care of, right? I mean, there's no dependence on government or NEP per se, right? Mechanical engineering after 2025, I think, see, as I told you, right, I mean, every area, I mean, maybe I'm basically from tech side of it, I would have quoted some examples related to tech, but in the mech space also, mechanical space also, there's huge opportunities. Be it, even in automotive for that matter, At one point of time, we used to see one new car model used to get released a year, or maybe once in 2 years. Today you see every brand releases a car maybe every month or a quarter, right? In a year, at least they have some 10 car launches. Maruti itself launches maybe over 5 to 10 cars every year. Maybe other brands, right? There are thousands of mechanical engineers are required, right? So not just that, I think various other areas, mechanical engineers are needed. Okay, how far COVID pandemic influences? 1 minute. Sorry about it. Okay. I think Venkata Chalapati ji, Professor, thank you for joining. I mean, one of the very few passionate people that I've kind of worked on educational institution is Professor Venkata Chalapati from Periyar University. Always, any discussion that he has, all the time he asks, what can we do to, help our youngsters? I think that's been the maximum discussion that we had. Thanks, Professor. Yeah, I think one of the points he said, is it possible for industry captains to create model institution and say explicitly what industry expects from academia and youth, right? I'm sure there are a couple of them are already doing it, okay? There are a couple of industry, rather the successful industries ended up, starting education institutions and they're running it successfully. There are already some models in place. As I said, right, I mean, all industry guys won't end up because for industry, their core business is to develop their own industry. So academic institutions, I think well, I think there are institutions who are maybe 30 years old, 50 years old, doing really well, right? I mean, I'm not generally saying that they're not really contributing, but they're a real good institution. But let's not be only limited. Let's not have only limited numbers. I'm sure every education institutions can do well, right? It's again that change in their mindset, the vision that you have for your institution. How part you can figure it out, right? I mean, it's like what you want to accomplish. If that is defined very well, I think how somehow happens. I think one of the examples I said, don't go anywhere, just go to your own alumni. I'm sure you'll get some real good people in your own alumni network who made it big in their life, are willing to contribute back to you. So how to give enough time for entrepreneurship in affiliated colleges? I know there are limitations in academic setup. I very much agree. I think since I've closely worked, I know affiliated institutions have to do what university says. But I think you should look at beyond that, right? I mean, I know while there are limitations, can you do something beyond that, right? Maybe some weekends, you can run some programs for entrepreneurship, or some passionate professors, who can guide and mentor these youngsters. And, I'm sure you can do beyond that. Now, while there are limitations, but there are also ways beyond limitations that you can work, okay? What industry expect from academia and youth? I think to be very blunt, I think technically across all industries expect somebody who can be immediately deployed on the project, right? Productive as early as possible, right? I mean, required skills. But I don't want you just prepare people for a job. I mean, that's not my expectation, and I don't advise also, right? So it's a career, and people have about 30, 40 years of career. I also don't want you guys to become like train somebody for a Java, like a training institute. No, that's not the objective, okay? Not the expectation as well, right? So, but try and have those future technologies as a part of the curriculum where awareness is better, and industry will still continue to train them, right? Some of the industry practices, all that, they will continue to train. And then what is the prospect for startups and incubation centers in higher education institutions, especially IT oriented, as we yesterday witnessed Microsoft generously funded IIIT Madras. Yeah, as I told, right, today it's all ending up in IITs and some NITs and a couple of institutions. Why they go there? Again, they have a vibrant ecosystem in IITs, the professors and all of that, right? It's again, if the professors in the other institutions also take step forward, right? I mean, show your competence, capability, maybe department-wise, not individual professors, department, institutional level. I think you can get funding, right? I mean, there are government avenues are there who can fund. But unfortunately, I mean, sorry to say this, I mean, not any specific institution. Typically, most of this government, DST, etc., gets invested, infrastructure gets created. I don't see much of an outcome from many institutions. But of course, there are some of the institutions put to good use. But the majority of them ended up as labs and create infrastructure gets into records. What's more important is, I think, with that infrastructure, what is that you can do? I think only professors can make all the difference. I think you will have to take that step forward, which is the key, right? I think that makes all the difference.
Ask the participants to raise hand so that you will be given permission to interact with the expert. Karthik sir, please make Dr. M. Sudhakar Reddy. Please give permission to him.
Hello.
Doctor, please go.
Hello. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Professor. Good evening.
I am Dr. M.S. Reddy from Andhra Pradesh.
Hi, Professor.
Sir, what is the role of research and consultancy in the curriculum alignment and delivery?
I think if you look at it, I think higher education institutions, especially research, is a very critical part of it. And I mean, I've addressed one side of it, mostly keeping in our industry, right? They're very service oriented. That's where the job employment all came in. Research is very important, especially when you're building these entrepreneurship ecosystem, right? Unless there's an R&D, there's a research, I think you will not build up future products and future IPs. Very important, okay? And for that, I think you have right ecosystem within your academia setup, be it universities, AICT, UGC, DST. There are a lot of research work that happens in that ecosystem. I think you should encourage, again, in the mad rush of preparing people for jobs, I think somewhere this research activity is taking a backseat in institutions. Okay, I personally feel I think that's an important component that institutions should be working towards.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think NEP, if I look at it, I think one of the things maybe you all can correct me, is NEP is trying to look at these universities rather than becoming affiliating institutions or conducting exams, awarding certificates, degrees, etc. I think the major thrust for the government and especially government institutions and universities to focus more on research. I think that change anyway they are trying to bring in. But I think that's equally important for private institutions, right? Research is not just for PhD scholars, or research is not just limited to postgraduates. At the undergraduate level, of course, people can pursue, and which is a critical component for people getting into entrepreneurship. Right? Unless they get those IPs built or research done, I think they will not succeed. Yeah.
Karthik sir, please give permission to Mr. Alok Raj. Professor Alok Raj, you're given permission. Professor, are you there? Any other participants who would like to interact, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful session. I think no participants are willing to express their questions. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on advancement in technology and need for curriculum alignment. And the discussion related to incorporate the disruptive technologies, 360-degree development and entrepreneur mindset in higher education. That would have enlightened the participants. We are grateful to you for the wonderful session by providing the insights on the key sectors for the employment opportunities and where the focus to be directed while designing the curriculum. I thank you once again for sharing your proficiency, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I can see, I think people were pretty active right from the time started till now. I can see all of them are in the session. Hopefully it was useful to all of you. And I think thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jagdishwari ma'am, please post the feedback link.
So Professor, I'm signing off. Is that fine?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Karthik sir, உங்களுக்கு கொடுத்தாங்களா feedback link?
Post பண்ணிட்டேன் madam.
Yeah, ma'am, which is posted in the chat box.
Okay, sorry. I didn't notice. Thank you.